When you all think of Busselltown, Bussell Island, do you think of it as a town? Do you think of it as an island? How do you perceive that?
Well, it was colored to me. Go ahead.
I was gonna say,
Fast.
for me, it's neither one. I really didn't think about Busselltown being a town. Certainly Bussell Island was off the beaten path. I don't think about that at all. My memory is mostly of Busselltown is that I couldn't associate with any of the people, mostly, for the most part. And riding the bus from Busselltown to Greenback to go to grade school, I hated school. I hated that ride. I hated that. I was glad to see that orange school bus show up to take me back home, because I hated school. I did that on up. I started enjoying school probably by the time I got to 7th or 8th grade.
Okay.
He hates people.
Well,
I said, he dislikes people. He didn't want to be around all those people. That's what sister tells me.
But he liked my sister.
Yeah, that's right.
she came from Chicago too.
Oh, that's right.
And she came back to grade school.
Yeah.
And I think about the 6th or 7th grade.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. She was
And,
4 years older than me.
And as luck would have it, she was a cute girl, and there was a vacant seat in my 6th grade class that she sat right in front of me. And I remember that it was great fun for me to say all kinds of vulgar and
risque, huh?
all kinds of language that I knew that why she had come to this area. It was your mom, and how religious she must have been. So it was great fun for me to irritate her by saying all kinds of vulgar expressions that I had learned at Greenback School.
But that's about the time you started liking school, though, right?
Yeah, about the same time.
I'll tell you about the man that came down there, because this is funny, it's always been a story. There was a woman that owned a store out in Glendale, not the main store in Glendale, but another one. And Mr. Biden came to bring us to the Lord. She said, Mr. Biden came in here and brought us to God, praise God, they pulled him in with him. So
well, that's the guys I was talking about when he was sitting to Busselltown. Vining was his name. I'd forgotten his name.
Richard Vining.
But he was somewhat religious, and Patsy's exactly right. The story was that they dragged him down with them. Rather than him lifting him down, he dragged him down with him.
So that tells you they have dragged him down with him out in Busselltown.
Don't you think we need to bring in Garland Lee to this conversation to speak for the common person? He enjoyed his life there, don't you think?
He was one of the few people that I was permitted to play with.
What?
I said in my honest opinion, but Jack
Oh.
some people here.
No.
Jack played with Garland.
Garland was younger than me,
Yeah.
but they lived right below us in a house.
Yeah.
And moved in, and I guess they moved in there when he was probably maybe when he was born. But when he got older, I was permitted to play with him because he lived close by, and Mother could watch and make sure that he wasn't doing anything that would.
You gave him rides on your bicycle, or he gave you or something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah.
We've been his baby Joe Spence. Yeah, go forward to be back, work for Joe. Busselltown, the school always got for the aid, They had I remember those black and white labels and they really needed that food, and the rest of us didn't need it. We'd kick it down the road, we'd walk to school, we'd kick it down the road, and now that I think about that, how much food we wasted that they would like to have, because they didn't have very much money at all. But there were 2 girls and 1 boy, and Mr. Gibson, and they lived on the island for about 3 years, I guess, maybe longer than that. But I think about that now, how bad that we were to do that. But you see, the rest of us had families. We didn't have a lot of money. We had enough to have grapefruit juice, and we had big cans of grapefruit juice, and that dirt road, you know, that thing used to roll and roll, and we enjoyed kicking that. There was the people that lived in the area.
That
But
was
the
during the
Gibsons,
Great Depression.
yeah, it was during the Depression.
Yeah.
And Franklin Roosevelt, as some people call him, old Frank Roosevelt, had started programs where that needy families could get food. And they just assumed that everybody at Busselltown School needed the canned food and whatever they were providing.
We did.
What Patsy's talking about is they didn't really want it,
Yeah, we didn't want it.
didn't need it, but they were given some stuff they had to take home, and rather than carrying it, they kicked it down the road.
See, we were so, just thoughts. Kids at that age are thoughts. But I didn't really have poor the Gibsons were. But they lived on that island, and he farmed it. So they lived there several years. I
Well,
don't
I
know.
know there's people,
Yeah.
it flooded every year, large floods, up to 11 feet high. And so those people who lived on Bussell Island in the spring had to hire a boat to take their belongings away. Often it didn't, I don't know if the house was built up or whether the water came through, but Garland's father lived on that island too. What was his name? Shadrach?
Shadrach.
He lived on Shack they call him, yeah. But all of this, not that this is what you want, that you need to include, but there's just this history before the white settlers came in 1826, and the finger of land was Cherokee hunting grounds under treaty, until 1819. But the interesting thing is a fellow in Blount County got a license to run that ferry starting in 1793.
Really?
So people, if he actually built it, he had the license, people would travel through Indian Hunting Ground to cross over and come to Lenore City and on to Nashville, etc. Way back then would take that as a risk,
What I wanted to tell you is that my dad, our father, started in the bus business by bidding for the school bus. But then, as my sister said, during World War II, nobody could get gasoline, so he thought of the idea of converting some of his buses into buses that would haul the workers to Alcoa. And that's what he did. He had one that started at Busselltown, then went all the way through Greenback and picked up more people. Then he had another bus that started in Greenback. And there's one time he had 3 buses that went to the aluminum company. And as the 50s came along and the late 40s after the World War II and people could get gasoline, nobody wanted to ride the bus when they could drive their car to work, which is true today. And that's why the companies have to build such huge parking lots, because their employees have to park their cars. And there's really no buses that exist anymore.
Damn it, Mr. Bussell, the older man, the grandfather, he sat in a chair up there by a big maple tree and watched the people cross the ferry and counted them money. He counted the quarters. I think that's interesting.
Was that John?
No, that's, I don't know what Mr. Bussell's name was. They had 5 or 6 boys. John is one of the boys. You did say John, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am.
He worked at the bank, but Mr. Bussell counted those quarters as they came in.